This video is part 2 of my series about hi-fi budgets. It might be a good idea to check out part 1 if you've missed it. So now I'm going to go on to the section where we're going to look at typical price ranges for speaker systems, and I would say we're going to start with bookshelf speakers because I think they're probably more popular these days. Less people have room for floor standers and they're not as acceptable, and floor standers would be probably double the budget of bookshelf speakers. So if you live in the UK, a great store to get started would be somewhere like Richer Sounds if you want to go to a speaker shop, but there are many speaker shops online. Nintronics is one great shop that I've been to before. Superfi is another one. We have Peter Tyson, that's another great shop, online shop. So yeah, these days we have the internet, so you know, you have a lot of options there. You could start your journey with budget speakers. I'm referring to these as budget speakers, but I would say that they're not really hi-fi, right? You could start with 60 quid for a pair of speakers and an amplifier and DAC for, you know, 150 quid, something like that. And there you go, you've got £200, £250, and you're all in. But I wouldn't really call that a hi-fi system, hi-fi meaning high fidelity. So that is something I would not recommend if you're getting into hi-fi, because it's obviously contradictory. So entry-level hi-fi would be something like bookshelf speakers around the £250 mark to £500 mark. That's what I would consider entry-level hi-fi, and that would be for passive speakers. What type of speakers would we have in this category? Well, in the UK, here's some examples. We have the Wharfedale Diamond series. At the moment, we are on Wharfedale Diamond Series 12. We have the Dali Spector series. We have the Monitor Audio Bronze, ELAC Debut, and the like. The next step up, I would say, would be the £500 to £1,000 category, so essentially doubling in price. And that would be something like the B&W 6 series, the Dali Opticon series, the Wharfedale Evo series, the KEF Q series and the LS50, the Monitor Audio Silver series, and the like. I would say that would be a great upgrade from entry-level hi-fi. I would call that entry to mid-level hi-fi, probably like mid-level hi-fi. That's a massive upgrade. You double in price and you get quite good performance gains for that. Moving up from £1,000, it gets a little bit more complicated because the sound improvements that you get become smaller and smaller and smaller, because speakers as a technology, loudspeakers, over the last century, the improvements that were to be made have already been made. Every single generation, there isn't such a huge difference anymore. So these days it's like cost savings and how much they're able to squeeze into a system. So every single year you might gain a few percentage points in sound quality. Some people swear that the old ones sounded better. They don't always get better. So yeah, moving up from £1,000, you spend a lot more, the gains get smaller and smaller, and then you begin to pay for things like luxuries, I would call them. For example, if the manufacturer uses a specialist wood veneer or a varnish or something like that, these things add labor costs into the production mix, and that adds more money to the value of the speaker. And the other thing, when the price goes up and up and up, the VAT that you pay goes up as well, and that VAT is not being used to buy your speakers, that's going to the government. So for example, if you were to buy a set of Dali Rubicon 2s and that speaker is £1,699 retail price, £300 approximately of your budget, of that 1,700 quid that you spent, about £300 of that has gone to the taxman in VAT. Whereas if you bought a pair of £250 Wharfedale Diamonds, only £40 of that approximately would be VAT. You've spent £260 more in tax. So it's not always double the money, double the gains, because you're paying more tax as well. And I think a lot of people forget that when they're considering what they're actually spending and what the speaker shop is actually getting in terms of revenue. Another thing I'd like to say is if we consider the business model, it's called the BCG matrix. we have a quadrant. We have the star products, and that would be like the Apple iPhone, where Apple gets a very high profit margin for that and they make a lot of sales. That's called a star. And then we have a cash cow, which is like McDonald's, for example, low price, high sales. So that would be our cash cow. Now, where is it that the hi-fi speakers in this market, where do hi-fi speakers fit on this quadrant? And this would be the question mark quadrant, where we have a high profit margin but not many sales, because unfortunately there's not a lot of people in this market that are captivated by this hobby. It's a few select people. The more up in price we go and the smaller the markets get, it means that the manufacturer, they have fixed costs that they have to pay for, and the profit margins per speaker have to get wider and wider and wider to be able to account for those fixed costs that, you know, a cheaper speaker would be able to cover with millions of units, if you get what I mean. So that's another thing. When you're going up and up and up in the price range, £2,000, £4,000, £5,000, £10,000, more of the money you're spending is going towards covering the fixed costs of the manufacturer, because they have to slap a massive profit margin on it to survive. If you're on about value, it's a very difficult thing to get right in this market. In the end, I would recommend, if you're starting out in hi-fi, I wouldn't recommend spending more than, you know, I think you could spend up to £1,000 on your first set of speakers, but I wouldn't spend more than that on your first set of speakers, because there's still more things to buy. You know, a good place to be would probably be around the £400, £500 mark, because then you're entering that hi-fi realm and, you know, you're getting quite good value for money as well. Another option, if we're talking about budgets and value, would be the direct to manufacturer route, which means that rather than going to Richer Sounds, where Richer Sounds buy from, let's say, B&W or Kef, let's say, Richer Sounds is the middleman and maybe perhaps even a distributor. Direct to manufacturer, you're cutting out the middleman and you're purchasing it at a better price. And there's a lot of these new speaker companies that are sprouting up now out of nowhere, and some of them are very, very good. Some of them are doing very well as well in terms of sales. The value that you get, the bang for your buck, it's very, very difficult to beat. If you'd like me to cover direct to manufacturer models and companies, please put it in the comments below, and if there's enough demand for it, I shall make a video about it. In the next video, I will be explaining how to get the maximum value from your amplifier and source components. If anybody has any questions, please let me know in the comments below and I'll get back to you.